let's go over a sample promissory note. So over on the top, on a promissory note, you're going to have the loan amount. It does say US $102,000. And then it'll have the date on the right. And then it'll say, for value received, the undersigned. And then it'll have the company's name, the LLC that's closing, and they are called also the borrower. And then it'll have your name as the company owner for the private lending business. And it'll say either a California corporation, a Florida corporation, wherever or whichever state you're actually in. And then it'll have the wording for the loan amount, $102,000. Then a little bit further down, it'll have exactly the first payment date and then the interest rate. And then it'll have other specific terms, and then it'll provide the maturity date or when the loan will end, the maximum interest rate, and the mortgage information. Besides that, it'll state when the prepayment penalty will end, the specific date. On page 2 of the promissory note, it will state, in the event of default and other capitalized terms used but not defined in this note, shall have the meanings given to such terms in the mortgage. And then it'll specify exactly what will happen if payment isn't made. A little bit further down, it'll have exactly how much the borrower needs to pay per month, which in this case is $653.12. If there are any applicable payments, then that'll state there. A very important section in the promissory note is F, acceleration. The acceleration of the mortgage in case of the event of default, then what will happen is the entire principal loan balance will need to be paid immediately. And then the borrower will need to pay for that, including any prepayment penalty that they had. So that's very important to take into account. So they understand that they will have an acceleration of their mortgage if they don't pay on time. On page 3, it goes over any late charges that the borrower is going to have after a certain time frame. So in this case, it says 5 days, and the borrower will pay a late charge equal to 10% of such overdue interest or principal and or interest installment payment. Below that, it has the default rate, which means that the loan can't be past due more than 30 days or more. And then on the bottom, under L, it does state that this is a full recourse personal liability loan. Well, now there are loans that are non-recourse loans where if the borrower doesn't finish paying, they will not be accounted for that loan. Now, voluntary and involuntary payments basically means that the borrower can send additional principal payments to bring down their loan amount. And if sometimes they haven't made their payments, then involuntary prepayments will need to be made. Now, for this specific loan, this loan has on page 4 a prepayment penalty of 5% of the principal being paid for any prepayments occurring during the prepayment period. So that's how much the borrower would have to pay, 5% of the loan amount. Now, it does state that there could be additional costs and expenses that the borrower will need to cover. On page number 5, it does talk about forbearance. Forbearance basically means that the payments are delayed, but it does state that it will not waive the exercise of the right or remedy, which means that the borrower still has to pay whatever is owed to the lender. Now, there will be some waivers and additional loan charges that the borrower will need to take into account if anything is, as it says, if the borrower has been in violation of any indebtedness that constitutes interest. So, which means that if the borrower doesn't pay on time, then there could be additional charges. The purpose of indebtedness, the borrower states that the proceeds of this note will be used solely for business or commercial investment. So this is the key as a private lender. You want to make sure that the borrower understands this is for commercial investment or business purposes solely. No other reason. It can't be for personal in any way, shape, or form. When we go down to P, counting of days, it's very important that everyone understands that days are being counted in as calendar days and not business days. So we're not skipping Saturdays and Sundays. We're actually counting Sundays and Saturdays and any other holidays. So that's very important the borrower understands. On page 6, it does say that the borrower has consent to jurisdiction and venue, that they can obviously go and litigate with you as the private lender if that becomes the case. And then that document imaging is being done as well so that the borrower and the lender have a digital copy of these documents. Further down, it says waiver of trial by jury, so there won't be any juries or anything like that in this case. On page number 7, the borrower will need to sign and their company information will show there. Below that, you as the private lender or whoever the person that needs to sign the last document for the promissory note will need to sign, date, and include that information here.